Hello students, my name is Niyati Said and thanks for watching Edupedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is the first section of the chapter Locomotion and Movement. So, movement is one of the significant features of living beings. Animals and plants, they exhibit a range of movements. Streaming of protoplasm in the unicellular organism like amoeba is a simple form of movement. Movement of cilia, flagella and tentacles, they are shown by many organisms. Human beings can move limb, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. Some of the movement result in a change of place or location, and such voluntary movements are called as locomotion. So locomotion can be defined as that it is the voluntary movement that results in the change of location. Walking, running, climbing, flying, swimming, they all are some forms of locomotory movements. Locomotory structures, they need not to be different from those affecting other types of movements. For example, in paramecium, cilia helps in the movement of food through cytopharynx and locomotion as well. Hydra can use its tentacles for capturing its prey and also use them for locomotion. We as a human beings use limbs for changes in body postures and locomotion as well. Method of locomotion performed by animals, they vary with their habitats and demand of the situation. However, locomotion is generally for search of food, shelter, mate, suitable breeding grounds, favorable climatic conditions, or to escape from danger or predators. Okay? So locomotion is an active travel from place to place, and it requires energy expenditure to overcome two forces. And which are those two forces? Friction and gravity. Okay, and locomotion is importance depends on the environment. Now come to the types of locomotion. Swimming, as I have told you that walking, running, climbing, flying, swimming, they are all some forms of locomotory movements. Okay, so swimming, gravity is not a problem, but friction is. Friction from water. When a swimmer swims in water, then he has to confront friction of water. So the water supports weight but is dense and it presents resistance on the body of a swimmer. Legs as oars, jet propelled and undulating side to side or up to down. Okay, so a swimmer has to face the resistance of water by undulating or jet propelling in the water. Streamlined body shapes, it aids in the increased speed. A streamlined body, as a, you can say, as a submarine has a streamlined body. Okay, that helps in the increased speed in water. Okay, now the locomotion on land. Locomotion on land, it need to be able to support self and overcome gravity. Air presents little resistance but also little support. Energy expenditure to propel forward and keep them falling down. Muscles and skeleton, they are more important than streamlined shape. Okay, because this streamlined shell, it helps in the increased speed of the swimmer in the water. But when it comes to the locomotion on land, then muscles and skeleton, they play an important role. Okay. The third is hopping. We have so far studied locomotion on land and swimming. Now third is hopping. And fourth is walking and running. First we'll be studying about the hopping. Tendons in legs, they store energy when landing, like a spring for our next jump. What are tendons? That connects muscles to bones. So the tendons which are present in the legs, they store energy when landing, and they also act like a spring for our next jump. Rest with the tail and the hind feet on the ground. It costs little energy to maintain. Suppose an organism is sitting with the tail and the hind feet on the ground, and he is ready to hop, or you can say that he is ready to spring for the next jump. So that costs little energy to maintain. Okay. Now the fourth is walking and running. Walking and running has to overcome friction between foot and ground. Walking four-legged. If we talk about the four-leg organism, then the walk 3 on the ground all the time, and 2-legged part 1 of at all times. And running, 2 to 3 feet move at once, if not all. And the momentum is the main factor that stabilizes the body position when walking or running. That makes you stand erect. Okay. Now the fifth is crawling. Friction adds considerable resistance because of increased contact. Undulate body side to side, inch forward, or peristalsis. So this is crawling. Now the sixth is flying. Wings are there, or wings are developed to completely overcome gravity. Shape must alter air current to create lift. All based on microtubule or microfilament systems. Okay. Now comes bones. Bones, they are composed of moist and living tissue. Okay, and they are you can say fibrous connective tissue. Okay, this is the pink part is white fibrous connective tissue that forms new bone after fracture. Okay, and this blue one, this is blue is cartilage that acts like a cushion surface for joints. Okay, and insides are just inside the cartilage. These are osteocytes. Osteo means bone, and cytes means cells. So these are the bone cells that secrete bone matrix. Okay, we are studying this spongy bone. Okay, and that contains red bone marrow cells in which RBCs are generated. Okay. Yellow bone marrow is stored fat from blood to bone, and red bone marrow, it produces RBC, as I have told you. Okay. See, this is the yellow bone marrow, and this is bone marrow that produces RBCs. Okay, and this is cartilage. Okay, that acts like a cushion that acts like a cushion surface for joints. Now comes muscles. As I have told you that for locomotion, bones, muscles and tendons, they play a very important part. So bones we have already studied. Now comes the muscle. The basic function of muscle is to generate force. Secondarily, muscles can provide some shape and form to organism. It provides a structural support, you can say, in addition to bones. Okay, anatomically and functionally, muscles can be divided into two types, which are those smooth and striated. Striated or stripped muscle can be further divided into skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle, but functionally they are of two types. First is smooth and second is striated. Now the striated is also known as stripped muscles, and they are further divided into two, which are those: first is the skeletal muscle and second is cardiac muscle. Okay, we'll be studying muscles in detail, but for the time being just I'm giving you the overview. Okay, now regardless of the type, all muscles, they share the following basic properties. First is conductivity. Conductivity means a muscle has the ability to conduct an action potential. We'll be studying action potential in detail, but for the time being just know that all muscles, they share the following basic properties, and first is conductivity. Second is irritability. Muscles are stimulated, a body is stimulated, then muscle will react. Okay, and be it any kind of muscle, be it striated or smooth. Okay, now the third property that is being shared by every muscle is contractibility. A muscle can shorten or produce tension between its ends, so it must be contractile. And the fourth property is relaxation. A muscle can return to resting properties after contraction. Okay, so these are the 5 properties that, regardless of the type of the muscle, they share following basic properties. First is conductivity, second is irritability, third is contractibility, fourth is relaxation. Okay, and fifth is distensibility. Distensibility means a muscle can be stretched by a force outside of the muscle itself. The muscle is not injured as long as it is not stretched past its physiological limit. That means a muscle has its physiological limit, and after that, or you can say within this limit, a muscle will not be injured as long as you stretch it. Okay. Now comes sixth is elasticity. That means a muscle will resist elongation and will return to its original position after massive or active elongation. That means it will again come back to its original position, just like a spring. So elasticity is the opposite of distensibility. This is distensibility, okay, in which muscles can be stretched by the force outside of the muscle itself, and the muscle is not injured as long as it is in its physiological limits. Okay, now creating movement. How movement can be created? I have taught you that tendons, they connect muscles to bones. So the muscle action, it shortens or contracts muscles. As you can see that these are biceps, and this is tricep, and this is tendon that connects muscles to bones. Okay, so this muscles, they shorten or contracts muscles. The agonist moves the muscles while the antagonist reverses the movement. Okay, now comes dissecting muscles. Muscles, it consists of a bundle of muscle fibers that are oriented parallel to each other. As you can see, these are the muscle fibers that are running parallel to each other. Okay, and cells are bundles of myofibrils. These muscle fibers are known as myofibrils, which are composed of contractile protein actin and myosin. Okay, that means myofibril, it consists of 2 proteins. First is actin and second is myosin. Proteins, it form a stripped banding pattern that characterizes skeletal muscle. Okay, as you can see that stripping is there in this, these are the strippings. Okay, so it forms a stripped banding pattern that characterizes the skeletal muscle, and contractile unit of a skeletal muscle is sarcomere. Okay, sarcomere, this is sarcomere. That means between two light bands, the space, this is light band. Okay, so the space between two light bands is sarcomere. Okay, we'll be studying in detail when I'll teach you the mechanism of muscle contraction. Then we'll be studying in detail, but for the time being, just know that sarcomere is the distance between two light bands, and the sarcomere is a contractile unit of skeletal muscles. Okay, now this is the contracting filament model. Sarcomere contracts when thin filaments slide over thick. Which is thin filament? Remember students, I've taught you thin filament is actin and myosin is the thick filament. So sarcomere, it contracts. Sarcomere, this is sarcomere. Okay, this is the distance between two light bands. This Z are the two light bands. Okay, and the distance between two Zs is sarcomere. So the sarcomere contracts when thin filaments slide over thick. Okay, and sarcomere shortens, but length of filament don't change. Head of myosin filaments bind ATP. I'll show you the animation also in my next presentation, that how myosin, it binds ATP so that it can bind to actin and filament. Okay, head produces power stroke, which moves the actin towards the center of the sarcomere when ATP is released. Okay, see, this is contractile muscle and this is fully contracted muscle, and this is contracted sarcomere, and this sarcomere is in the relaxed state. Okay, now comes the skeleton. Skeleton, I have taught you that it is of three main types, which are those hydrostatic skeleton, exoskeleton and endoskeleton. So a skeletal system is necessary to support the body, and it protects internal organs, and it allows for the movement of an organism. There are three different skeleton designs that provide organism these functions, and which are those hydrostatic skeleton, exoskeleton and endoskeleton. Now first is hydrostatic skeleton. Hydrostatic skeleton is one formed by a fluid-filled compartment within the body, and which we call it as coelom. The organs of the coelom are supported by the aqueous fluid, which also resists external compression, and this compartment is under hydrostatic pressure, and because of the fluid, and it supports the other organs of the organism. And this type of skeleton system is found in soft-bodied animals such as sea anemones, earthworms and cnidarians. Okay, in which fluid is filled in the coelom or in the cavity of the body, and that protects the other organs of the organisms. Okay, so this is how it protects, or it provides cushion body parts from shock, and it gives shapes, and it supports for muscle action. So this is the first type of skeleton that we have studied, that is hydrostatic skeleton. Now is exoskeleton. Exoskeleton is an external, as you can say, this is exoskeleton. Okay, that hard body covering. So you can say that exoskeleton is an external hard encasement on the surface of an organism. For example, the shells of crabs and insects are exoskeleton. This skeleton type provides defense against predators, and it supports the body, and it allows for the movement through contraction of attached muscles. As with vertebrates, muscle must cross a joint inside a exoskeleton. Arthropods such as crabs, lobsters, they have exoskeleton that consist of 30 to 50% of chitin. Chitin is secreted by epidermal cells, okay? And the exoskeleton is further strengthened by the addition of calcium carbonate in organisms such as lobsters. Okay, so this is how exoskeleton acts. Okay, now comes endoskeleton. Endoskeleton consists of hard mineralized structure that is located within the soft tissue of an organism. An example of primitive endoskeletal structure is spicule of sponges. These are the spicules, okay? And the bones of the vertebrate, they are composed of tissues, whereas sponges have no true tissues. Endoskeleton, it provides support for the body and it protects internal organs and it allows for the movement as well. And it allows movement through contraction of muscle attached to the skeleton. Okay? And please note that the human skeleton is also an example of endoskeleton. It is not exoskeleton. Human skeleton is an example of endoskeleton that consists of 206 bones in an adult. And it has 5 main functions. In humans I'm talking about. First is axial skeleton and second is your appendicular skeleton. Okay, we'll be studying. Okay, so as I have told you that endoskeleton in humans are of 2 types. First is axial skeleton and second is appendicular skeleton. Okay, so first we'll study about the axial skeleton. Okay, all vertebrates have an axial skeleton and it supports the axis or the trunk of the body. Now, skull, vertebrae and ribcage is an example of axial skeleton. Okay, and please note that vertebrae are all similar in structure. That is your cervical, your thoracic, your lumbar and your sacral. They all are of same size and they are similar in structure, I meant to say. Okay, so and most have appendicular skeleton. This was all about axial skeleton. Now comes the appendicular skeleton. But before moving on to the appendicular skeleton, I would like to tell you that the function of the axial skeleton is to provide support and protection for the brain, spinal cord and organs in the ventral body cavity. And it also provides a surface for the attachment of muscles that move the head, neck and trunk. It performs respiratory movements and stabilizes parts of the appendicular skeleton. Okay. Now comes the appendicular skeleton. Bones of appendages and anchoring appendages. Okay. This comes under appendicular skeleton category. And pelvic and pectoral girdles are also or you can say that it also comes in the category of appendicular skeleton. Now, the axial skeleton, it consists of the bones of the skull, ossicles of the middle ear, and hyoid bone, vertebral column, and rib cage. That is thoracic rib cage. Okay. So first is your skull. Skull is a part of axial skeleton. Apart from skull, there are 2 things that comes under axial skeleton. Second is rib cage and third is vertebrae of spinal cord. So first we'll be studying about the skull. As I have told you that the bones of the skull, it support the structure of face and it protects the brain. Okay. And a skull consists of 22 bones, which are divided into two categories, which are those cranial and facial bone. Cranial bone, that forms the structure of the brain, and facial bones that support the structure of the face. Okay. Now the cranial bones, they are 8 bones, and they form the cranial cavity, which encloses the brain and serves as an attachment site for the muscles of the head and neck. There are 8 cranial bones that include frontal bone, 2 parietal bone, 2 temporal bones, and the 2 occipital bone, sphenoid bone and ethmoid bone. Okay. So this is how cranial bones and facial bones they function in conjugation with each other. Okay. So there are 8 cranial bones that include frontal bone. This is frontal bone. Then sphenoid bone, ethmoid bone. Okay. And parietal bone and occipital bone. Okay. So these are the 8 cranial bones. And there are 14 facial bones. I have told you that the skull consists of 2 bones. First is your cranial bone and second is your facial bone. Cranial bones we have already studied, which are 8 in number. And now comes facial bones. Facial bones are 14 in number, that forms the face, and it provides the cavity for the sense organs such as eye, mouth and nose. These are 14 bones: temporal bone, lacrimal bone, palatine bone, zygomatic bone, nasal bone and parietal bone. These are the cranial bones, but these are the facial bones: mandible, maxilla and vomer. So these were the 14 facial bones that serves as an attachment points for facial muscles. Now comes our second category, which is that after a skull we have read vertebrae of a spinal cord, which is an example of axial skeleton, or which comes in the category of axial skeleton. So the adult vertebral column is comprised of 26 bones, 24 vertebrae, the sacrum and the coccyx bone. Sacrum and coccyx bone also have bones, but together we are calling it as sacrum and coccyx bone, and 24 other vertebrae. In the adult, the sacrum is typically composed of 5 vertebrae that fuse into one. Okay, see, this is C1 to C7, this is cervical. Okay, T1 to T12, this is thoracic. And then L1 to L5, these are lumbar, and this is sacrum. Okay, and these are coccyx, that is tailbone. We begin life with approximately 33 vertebrae, but as we grow, several vertebrae they fuse together. Okay, and the adult vertebrae, they are further divided into 7 cervical vertebrae and 12 thoracic vertebrae and 5 lumbar vertebrae. Okay, now third is our rib cage, that comes under the category of axial skeleton. So this is thoracic cage or the rib cage that protects the heart and lung. Okay, now comes human appendicular skeleton. So far we have studied in axial skeleton 3 types. Okay, first is your skull, second is your vertebrae, and third is your thoracic cage. Now comes second type of skeleton, and that is appendicular skeleton. So the human appendicular skeleton, it is composed of the bones of the upper limbs, which functions to grasp and manipulate objects, and the lower limbs, it permits locomotion. See, and lower, it includes pectoral, this is pelvic and pectoral girdles. So this pelvic girdle see, this shoulder girdle is known as pectoral girdle, okay, and this is pelvic girdle. It attaches the upper and the lower limbs of the body respectively. This pink color indication is the appendicular skeleton, which is composed of bones of the upper limb, which functions to grasp and manipulate object, and this is the lower half that permits locomotion. So this was all about two types of the skeleton system. Okay, so in my next section of the presentation, we'll be studying about the types of the movement and the muscle types. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Edupedia word videos.